Welcome once again to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host with a cold, Dusty O'Connell. Joining me on my internet left is Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human, Arif Hassan. How you doing, Arif?
I'm good. How are you?
I have a cold.
Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Also, I'm suffering from some conflicted loyalties. The Twins and my Colorado Rockies are playing an interleague series yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so when I go out in public, I have to wear my Rockies jersey, but I changed into my Twins jersey just for this show.
Wait, who? But you'll be cheering for the Rockies come game time.
I mean, honestly, I just want it to be a fun and exciting game. I want there to be lots and lots of runs scored so that people shut up for 5 seconds about Coors Field. But realistically, I find myself cheering for a split that the Twins win 2-1 so that the Twins can stay on top of the AL Central. The Twins have fewer games to give right now than the Rockies do in terms of record. So I would like a split where the Twins win 2, but they're down 0-1. The Rockies won yesterday, and the Rockies are a much better team with much better pitching. So the possibility of a sweep is out there, but I don't know. It would be nice to see the Twinkies peel one off of an actually good team instead of just beating up on bad teams and losing to good ones, as has kind of been their MO this season. Joining us to my internet right is Norse Code's number one intern, Carson Schubert. How you doing, Carson?
I am well, not so well after that Twins loss last night, Dusty, but, that's the way the Twins are. They're still above 500. We'll take that.
Exactly. And Phil Hughes can't win them all, it turns out. It's an unfortunate reality.
Very true.
Norse Code is brought to you by you, the listener. Without your support, we would not be able to do things like convince interns to join the crew or buy portable internet devices to bring you the best training camp updates of any Minnesota Vikings podcast. And it is through your ongoing contributions that we continue to provide the best digital multimedia content of any Minnesota Vikings podcast. So take a moment right now, go to paypal.me/NorseCode and make a one-time donation in any dollar amount you would like. Or if you really want to help us out, then you'll go to patreon.com/NorseCode and sign up to contribute monthly in any amount you desire. Although we suggest about $3.50. Keep the old Loch Ness Monster at bay. And that makes it easier for us to kind of plan our future, figure out what we can and cannot do during the season. Because, of course, this is the sleepy time for football. We were able to, we tend to trim down to one episode every other week, and we've got just enough content for a perfect length Norse Code for the three of us to manage. Just enough news, just enough excitement. And we'd like to ramp that up during the season. And the extent to which we can do that is partially determined by your contributions. And the more ongoing contributions we can get, the easier that process is for us. So, please consider contributing to your homeboys over here at Norse Code. James is wasting away after subsisting only on frozen pizza. So let's help get that man some vegetables. Get him to an outlet.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was entirely a result of just personal choices.
Well, thanks for stepping on my promo, bro.
Do we know that he was forced into frozen pizza dome, or do we know that maybe he's just choosing frozen pizza?
Well, either way, we could use those dollars to I guess get him some counseling for his frozen pizza abuse habit. Yeah. One way or another, we need to get to the bottom of this. James needs our help, people. Very badly.
And I've talked a lot about frozen pizza on Vikings podcasts.
It's
frozen pizza's life, man.
Yeah, it's a thing.
For a college kid, anyway.
Yeah,
right.
Well, okay, maybe for college.
Trust me, long after college, it remains a thing.
Yeah, but it's different frozen pizza. This is a discussion we already had.
That's true.
It's a different nature of frozen pizza after college.
That's true. Get Carson out of Aldi. Donate to Norse Code today.
Yes.
On that note,
Aldi-
go ahead.
Aldi's is pretty good. So I'm not gonna say it's kind of like a Trader Joe's. You guys kind of know.
No, remember you can't have frozen pizza opinions that will be at all compelling when you're still in college.
I think he's just chilling for Aldi merchandise. I think he just wants like a sweet T-shirt and some socks or something.
Yeah, get that Aldi sponsorship. I respect the hustle.
Hey, that's what I got from Jack Links for bashing Oberto beef jerky.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they hooked him up.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, somebody posted something. I was like, you put in what you get out of it, or whatever their Oberto's signature sign is, or whatever. And I said, no wonder Jack Links is better. And somebody then tagged Jack Links in there, and they said, hey, you guys should get a T-shirt for being so nice about bashing our opponent, I guess.
Sure.
The lesson I've learned here is that my food takes should be more corporate. I need to be more commercialized when I discuss.
Well, yeah, so it needs to be more commercialized, and then your hate needs to be framed in the form of praise for something else. So you can't just be hating on a brand. You have to love another brand at the same time.
So all mailbag people, no more of this is pizza a sandwich nonsense. I want specific, is this brand better than this other national brand? So that we can cash in on that sweet, sweet swag. So the number one piece of Vikings news over the last couple of weeks has been the signing of controversial Arizona receiver and alcohol enthusiast Michael Floyd, who has served his mandatory prison time and sat in Roger Goodell's doghouse long enough to be picked up by a team who believes that he can make, hopefully, an honest contribution to the offense other than just giving people rides home.
Yeah, I think I think that also he'll probably serve 2 to 4 game suspension at the beginning of the season if he makes the team. So there's still some level of Goodell's doghouse that needs to be, lived in, I guess. I think the Michael Floyd signing, makes some sense, right? Like, obviously you have to worry about the off-field stuff, and for some athletes coming home, because he's from Minnesota, he went to Cretin-Derham Hall. Some athletes coming home can be a good thing because there's a support system in place that'll allow you to, stay in contact with the people who love and support you. For some athletes, that's a bad thing because all of the sort of bad elements that have encouraged or aggravated behavior that doesn't help a team. Those are still there, and they're your friends. You don't want to give them up. So it kind of depends on the player. I think in this case, it's more likely that a return to Minnesota would be a good thing. But I guess we'll see. In terms of his on-field capability, I think it's kind of like an open door, right? Like, I think that there's a chance that, he doesn't make the team. I think there's a chance that he's the third best receiver. I think there's a path that you can define that's very easy to believe where he becomes the third receiver on the team. And if he does so, you could see anywhere between 500 to, 800 yards. You could see between 400 and 800 yards. And none of that would be surprising. So it's really open-ended. And that way, I think it's a good thing because the Vikings have, some receiver depth issues that they have to work out, especially if Laquan Treadwell doesn't continue to advance.
Well, so that's the idea, right, is that he and Treadwell will basically be competing for the third wide receiver position.
Yeah, and they kind of fulfill similar roles. They're both big bodies. They're both meant to move the chains on third down. They're both meant to sort of win the ball in contested and tight spaces and sort of be red zone threats. Floyd's touchdown production hasn't quite matched that prototype of his style of play, but it's still how he's been used in Arizona. It's how he was, meant to be used coming out of Notre Dame. You could see them competing not just for being, the third receiver generically, but also the same type of situational receiver. He's an excellent blocker. That kind of, elbows in on Treadwell's territory. I was talking to a couple of New England guys about, what they saw from Treadwell in like the 6-5 games that, or not Treadwell, that Floyd was there for them. First thing they always mentioned that he was pretty tenacious and good blocker. And they said that he worked hard too, which is a good thing. It's difficult to envision, a wide receiver situation where, one couldn't fill in for the other, except in the case of just pure talent, because I think they've got very similar skill sets. There is going to be probably a direct one-to-one competition between the two.
Well, I agree with Arif. I think the depth is the big key factor of this signing, because we don't know if Treadwell is going to improve, if he's going to do. I mean, it's hard not to improve considering what he did on the field last year. But yeah, I think many of the skill sets are pretty similar. I'd say Michael Floyd's probably faster. I guess I don't really know a whole lot about his speed or anything, but I think he's probably faster than Treadwell. That's not too hard to beat, I don't think, at the wide receiver position. But it looks like it could be a good signing. It's a very low-risk signing, I think, and I think that'll be good for the Vikings, a low risk, hopefully a high reward. $1.5 million is the base salary. Arif, do you know if any of that's guaranteed at all?
I think that there's a roster guarantee, becomes guaranteed once he makes the roster, but I'm not confident of that. I haven't looked up his contract in a little bit. Okay. But yeah, like you said, it's fairly low risk. So, I mean, there's every possibility that, half of it's guaranteed, and so the Vikings face the prospect of, $750,000 in dead cap space, which is, not that much, if they decide that Floyd's not worth it. But yeah, and I think that, to your point about, Floyd having more speed, he's got, the capability probably of being more of a big play threat than Treadwell does. I think, obviously, Treadwell is probably faster than what he timed, but, I've long stated my concerns that his timing already indicates a lot of, worrisome things about his ability to contribute as a general receiver, which is not an issue that you had with Michael Floyd. But the flip side of that is that Michael Floyd had some really serious issues keeping his weight down, and that he doesn't look very fast when he doesn't keep his weight down. And so, when I reached out to one of the Arizona, analysts, not so much beat writers, but analysts, they made a distinction. When Michael Floyd is focused and he has his weight down, he actually looks like a legitimate starting receiver, like a wide receiver too. When he's got these focus problems, when his weight is ballooning, when he's getting in trouble off field, he's very prone to, that impacting his play, and he's a slow, unreliable receiver. What is nice is that he wins, 50-50 balls in the air either way, but his inability to separate, which is already a problem, becomes kind of magnified in that situation. So that's one thing to watch out for, too.
I think one thing that is interesting to me on the Vikings' approach this offseason, it seems like they're putting aside character concerns more. I mean, you had the character concerns with Dalvin Cook. Maybe he won't ever have a problem again. Obviously, Michael Floyd has his past. It's kind of interesting. The Vikings were kind of on this clean path. Oh, we can't take risks on guys like this for a while, and now all of a sudden they're back doing it again. I guess I don't know what your thoughts on that is, Arif, but I thought that's kind of been an interesting thought about the offseason so far.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of curious because it seems like a lot of these characteristics aren't, things that are necessarily like moral failings, right? Like, because the thing with Dalvin Cook is that kind of the deeper you dig, with most athletes or with most people, it doesn't have to be athletes, with most people, the deeper you dig, the more you're going to kind of uncover that will make you hesitant. That's just like, what people hide is the stuff that they don't want you to see, which by very nature is going to be, kind of unsavory. But I think that the deeper you dig on Dalvin Cook, the more actually it seems like he's actually got really solid character, which is kind of unusual. But I think that it kind of puts into some light a lot of what's been happening around him that kind of tanks his stock from a character perspective in a way that might not actually hold up and might not actually impact a team. For Michael Floyd, I think it's a different situation because of how low risk it is. I think the Dalvin Cook thing, they invested a lot in him. They invested their highest pick, which is only a second-round pick, but they invested their highest pick in him. And so I don't think that this fits into sort of the category of the Vikings kind of avoiding character flags. And remember, I think that the Vikings have happened to avoid character flags. I don't think it's like a thing on their board or anything like that because they were going to go get Johnny. And he's got all the friggin' character flags in the world. They ended up getting Teddy instead, which is nice. So thank you, Cleveland. But I don't think they're a team that avoids character flags. I think they're a team that has avoided character flags as a result of like happenstance.
Well, I think it's funny because we're in a league where, Colin Kaepernick can't get a job, and Kean Fahey has a pretty, significant body of evidence that would indicate that it's because teams don't like his like public-facing persona. Like there are certain kinds of character concerns and certain kinds of behaviors that will get you, functionally blacklisted from starting in the league. But to see the Vikings taking maybe not chances, but giving, young guys opportunities that have, one or two skeletons in their closet that are maybe not necessarily indicative of major moral failings, I think is refreshing. I think it's important that, people get second chances. Well, maybe second chance is the wrong word, but I think it's important that we, consider people as, entire people and not just the sum of like their good or bad actions, where any negative mark immediately disqualifies you from playing in the league.
It is difficult because teams just have a natural pressure to evaluate all of these things as risk factors and liabilities and contributions to that liability. So it's very difficult for a team to take a step back and evaluate the whole person, so much as it is easy, especially when they've got to put together 150, 200 large player boards, to just check off boxes and say, hey, this is the kind of thing that kind of adds to the risk or the liability of the team. Hey, this is the kind of thing that adds to the risk or the liability of a team. He's got a lot of those things. Or this thing in particular, it seems to be pretty bad, so it's a huge risk. Instead of that Robert Klemko piece, I don't know if you all read it in MMQB, instead of what Robert Klemko did, which is to take kind of a look at the whole person, which will give you a better understanding of what that liability means. It's not just, kind of just understanding who a player is and not painting them unfairly. It's also, a good business practice to kind of get that picture. But, Klemko took a look at his background, his environment, his friends, in what context a lot of these allegations occurred and, what those character flags mean and how they've impacted the team that he was on. And he took the holistic approach that you're talking about in that piece. Well, we should link it in the show notes. That's pretty fascinating and it's good stuff. I don't know if the teams have the resources to do that for 150 to 200 players, and they end up taking shortcuts that allow you to tick off, additions to the liability. And what's interesting, Dusty, I think, is that, holistically, if you take that look, you'll get a better understanding of the likelihood of that kind of stuff repeating. You'll get an understanding of what environments will allow you to take advantage of their capabilities in fullness without having to worry about those risks. Like it not only allows you to evaluate the risk of a player, it also allows you to evaluate, hey, if I take this player, what are the steps that I can take to kind of improve his social condition so that he can help the team out?
Well, exactly, and I think the more the league can incorporate that into its player development, the better off the game will be, as well as the players and the fans. So there was an article that has been retweeted approximately 600,000 times by official Vikings accounts on Pro Football Spot that suggests that the Minnesota Vikings defense should be better because the offense will be better.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about in the abstract for a while. There's this really good article. It's in Advanced Football Analytics, which used to be called Advanced NFL Stats, about how Peyton Manning was worth, what was it, like 6 points a game to his defense? Maybe not 6 points a game, maybe 6 points over the course of a season. Something. I should have read that article before I brought it up. But it's been a while because it was an evaluation of Peyton Manning's impact on the 2011 Colts season, and his absence. And he was worth, some amount of points a game, maybe 2 points a game. I don't know. But he was worth a pretty substantial amount because of field position. That's a pretty important thing. So Peyton Manning not only led longer drives that allowed you to avoid punts, turn those punts into kickoffs after you converted, those drives into field goals or touchdowns. But also, he was able to avoid turnovers, and turnovers give you the worst field position of all, unless you've got like a historically bad punter. And so that, does play, a pretty big role. This article on Pro Football spot, I don't think it goes into as much detail as that advanced football analytics piece did, but that's kind of the point of the advanced football analytics site, right? Is that they go like really deep into the numbers, and it's kind of weird. But yeah, no, it's I think it's a fine like kind of understanding of the way that we'll measure total defensive output, like in terms of points. Like if the offense is better, the defense will give up fewer points. That's not necessarily going to make the defense, better on a play-to-play basis. The only way that it could help make the defense kind of better is if you reduce the number of snaps that the defense has to play. And sometimes, Des, you're a Broncos fan, so you kind of know this. Sometimes it kind of works the opposite. If the offense scores so quickly so often, the defense gets on the field right away, and then it kind of hurts the defense. And so, the offense being better, it's not a one-to-one relationship of that helping out the defense from a total points perspective or from like a play-to-play perspective.
Well, yeah, it's not just a question of chewing up the clock and not just a question of field position, but if you have an offense that has some balance to it, where you're not restricted to hook routes and out routes to Adam Thielen or Kyle Rudolph like over and over and over, then you have the flexibility to kind of let your defense shine and maybe get a friggin' break every 10 minutes.
I think one of the things I saw from last year of defenses benefiting from the offense, I thought Dallas, the Cowboys, really benefited defensively from Dak and Zeke just chewing up clock and moving the ball down the field. I thought that is one of the most prime examples I've seen recently anyway, where that offense just helped that defense gain not necessarily more confidence, but also keeping them off the field longer and all kinds of different things that play into that also. And because Dallas's defense, if you look at that roster, there's nobody that really sticks out to you other than maybe like Sean Lee. And I think that offense was the key component of that whole team, that they made the defense better. And that's why Dallas was 13-3 and made the playoffs.
Well, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about like chewing up the clock, right? Is like having a team that has at least a semi-competent run offense, not like the worst or second worst in the league, right?
Right.
Yeah, I find it kind of interesting. You take a look at the Dallas Cowboys roster, you take a look at the Minnesota Vikings roster on defense, and at virtually every position, you'd give the Vikings, the win, right? You compare like left defensive end, right defensive end, defensive tackles, and you'd say the Vikings are better here, here, here. Maybe Malik Collins is better than Tom Johnson. Maybe that's it. But you go through all the linebackers, you go through the cornerbacks, you go through the safeties, and you'd 1-to-1. You'd give the Vikings the advantage. They were 1 point apart in total points scored. Dallas Cowboys allowed 306 points. Minnesota Vikings allowed 307 points. Now, obviously, the Vikings defense dropped off in a big way over the course of the season. The defense we saw in the first 5 weeks of the year is not the defense we saw for the rest of the year. So it's not fair, because I think the Minnesota Vikings defense gets a better reputation than how they performed for a lot of the season. But, it is a pretty good point that it changed the amount of total defensive points. But the thing that's kind of interesting to me is that total points scored is actually not super predictive of how good a defense is, or how many or how much of an impact it has on actually winning games. If you look at it in terms of points per drive, Dallas ranked 17th in points per drive last year, and while you could argue that that's kind of better than what you would have expected Dallas to perform, given the sheer amount of defensive talent that they had, it's not a huge change from the year before. They ranked 18th in points allowed per drive last year. Really, what Dallas benefited from was having fewer drives, and I don't know that actually, because if you have fewer drives, your offense gets fewer opportunities to score too, and so I don't know if that actually had as much of an impact on the Dallas defense in terms of ways that it helps win the game. It did have a huge impact on the Dallas defense in terms of the end point result, which I think is kind of an important thing to parse out too, because I think it is important to say, hey, a good offense will help out a defense if they will reduce turnovers. They'll give the defense more time to recover. They'll give you better field position. I just don't want to overstate the impact that it has, and I think that Dallas is a good example of a team where it is very easy to overstate the impact that it has because they were like 5th or something in points allowed last year, and the year before, they'd given up more points. They were like 16th in the NFL in total points allowed, and the defense didn't actually improve in terms of its drive-to-drive capability. They just had fewer drives, and they had fewer drives because of the offense, but that also meant that the offense had fewer opportunities to score points. And so I think that the offense does have an impact on the defense. I think that we tend to overstate the nature of that relationship, but I think the Dallas Cowboys are actually maybe the best example of that.
So since we don't have a Zeke Elliott on our team, are we going to be able to kind of replicate the effect that he had on the Cowboys offense and by extension its defense with, the three-headed monster of Murray, Cook, and McKinnon?
Well, I think that part of it is that it wasn't that Dallas had Zeke so much as they had Zeke and that astounding offensive line. And that's kind of part of the formula that the Vikings have been trying to get to, which is not just to develop or find a premier running back who they think they have in Dalvin Cook, and maybe rightly so, but also that they have an offensive line that will give that running back the type of room they need. I think the Vikings have clearly improved along the offensive line, both in run blocking and pass protection, but I don't know that they've improved enough for us to say you'll be able to grind out the clock a lot easier.
So moving forward, some slightly more recent news. Breaking news, the Vikings might be good. No. Recent signing, Freddie Tagaloa of, where did he play last? I'm super prepared.
Arizona Wildcats. I think he's a rookie.
Ah, yes. According to Matthew Collar of 1500 ESPN, the Vikings have added former Arizona Wildcats offensive lineman Freddie Tagaloa to a contract after their minicamp. That's not a very common thing to have happen, right?
Not in general. The Vikings have kind of had a history of signing rookies after minicamp or tryouts and cutting other UDFA rookies in the process. In this case, I don't think they cut a rookie. Who did they cut? They waived someone. BJ DeBose, right?
Yeah.
But very often the Vikings have signed a tryout and cut a contracted undrafted free agent. So that includes players like Marcus Sherrills in 2010. There was no minicamp in 2011 because of lockout. Adam Thielen in 2012. It happened in 2013, 2015, 2016. I think they didn't do it in 2014. But it's happened nearly every year, and the Vikings have done it again this year. Not just Freddie Tagaloa, but another. It was Tommy Armstrong, and then they waived him. So who knows if that counts. But they did sign him after a tryout, and then waived him soon after. Freddie Tagaloa is a player that has a lot of upside. More than I think most undrafted free agents. He suffered through a lot of injuries while at Arizona, repeated knee injuries, and if those are behind him, which sometimes they are, like there's a lot of instances where players who were injury prone in college are no longer injury prone for whatever reason, then he could be a solid contributor in terms of depth because he actually played pretty well for Arizona. I was taking a look at his Pro Football Focus, pressures given up, which is an incomplete stat given, how many different types of offenses there are in college and how friendly they are to giving up sacks. But generally speaking, he ranked pretty well. He gave up fewer pressures per snap than Isaac Asiata, for example, Damian Mama from USC, a couple of drafted guards, and a couple of drafted guards that people liked a lot. So, in terms of his actual play on the field, there's some indication there that, he might be able to pass protect. And the thing is, he's actually more well known for his enormous size and strength. He's 6'8", 330, which is pretty tall. It's taller than Alex Boone. It's about as tall as James Comey. And his max bench, 475, is an Arizona Wildcats locker room record. It's the highest I guess anyone on the team has been able to produce. And he produced 41 bench reps of 225 at his pro day. And generally speaking, max bench is probably more predictive of on-field play strength than the total number of reps you have at 225. But you don't tend to get access to that information unless a player is particularly impressive. So we can compare bench reps, and 41 would have been higher than any offensive lineman at the combine. So there's a lot to work with there. There's a lot to be impressed with. I don't know as much about him in terms of, he has got technique to shore up, or, hey, he's better in pass protection than run blocking, or, hey, he doesn't deal well with bull rushes. I don't know any of that yet. I'll watch him. But that's kind of the quick rundown on him.
The Daily Norseman article is worth clicking to just to see the phenomenal picture of Tagaloa appearing to chokeslam a teammate or something. You can't really tell what's happening there, but it is...
I think he's celebrating a touchdown.
Yeah,
actually, that person looks dead.
Exactly. The person he is lifting or holding up appears to be unconscious. Like, he appears to be limp. So maybe Tagaloa has a second career waiting for him in professional wrestling. He certainly has the size and the strength for it. But
he and Babatunde could probably do a pretty good tag team.
I'd pay to see that. Maybe they can join Billy Corgan's wrestling league, the NWA.
That's right.
That Billy Corgan. Yes. I think part of the reason there isn't maybe as much tape as there might otherwise be on Tagaloa is that he has been struggling with knee injuries on and off all throughout college, which is, somewhat concerning at the pro level, especially for Vikings fans. But
hey, at least they're not pec injuries.
Yeah, at least he is going to be ready for training camp, and maybe he'll even see a roster spot.
No, we'll see. He could probably be an interesting story to track, just because an undrafted free agent offensive lineman might be, I don't want to say like the injection of fresh blood they need, but I think that they need to be they need to have an open mind when it comes to filling out the depth chart of that offensive line, because, hey, maybe Rashad Hill works out at tackle, maybe Jeremiah Searles is a pretty good guard, but you've got a lot of questions. Like, Nick Easton didn't actually look good when he played, as much as I kind of liked him coming in. You've got Willie Beavers, who, obviously he's not good, or hasn't been good. Maybe he'll be good. But, there's a lot of openings, and I think that, kind of being creative in your approach to solving those problems is a good thing, and I think Tagaloa kind of fits that box.
Yeah, he's definitely a road grader, as you said, 6'8", 330 pounds, bench press impressive, and if anything, he'll be a good camp body for more competition on the offensive line, which we seem to be increasing quite a bit, which I think is a good thing. We need to get as much competition on that offensive line as possible.
I would concur with that. In other signing news, on the other side of the ball, the Bears released their former third-round draft pick, Will Sutton, and he was snapped up by the Vikings. Sutton has played 18 games in 3 seasons. And actually, Carson, you've got a pretty good tech sheet on Will Sutton. Tell us more.
Do I really?
Unless you just made all that stuff up in pre-show.
He's all right. Like I said, he's a defensive tackle, just kind of a depth signing. I think Matthew Collar said the Vikings must know something about him that nobody else did, or the Vikings always know something about a defensive player that nobody else does. People are shaking their head like, "Oh, what did we not see in this guy?" But he's an interesting fit on the defensive line. Arif's probably got a lot more in-depth stuff to talk about on him. He's 25 years old. That's Toby Johnson was 25 years old, but actually I think they're both 25. Never mind. But anyways, I think he'll be all right. We need more depth on the defensive line, defensive tackle particularly, because of Sharif Floyd's injury and Toby Johnson. Tom Johnson. I get the Johnsons confused again. He tore his Achilles or ruptured his Achilles or whatever. So there's definitely some injury concerns on that defensive line other than Linval Joseph. And of course we got Jaleel Johnson. We just keep adding more Johnsons. Good depth signing, and maybe he'll make the roster, maybe not. But more competition is never a bad thing.
He was a guy that ranked, I think, 6th in terms of polarity. He was one of the most polarizing players in the draft in 2014 when I was putting together a bunch of these consensus big boards. So a lot of people disagreed on exactly how good Will Sutton was or how much he could contribute. And a lot of that has to do with I it's stronger than a rumor, but rumors about his work ethic. It's kind of well established that he had some work ethic issues at Arizona State. The biggest issue was that Will Sutton was drafted into a 4-3 scheme in Chicago, and then they changed it to a 3-4 scheme where he probably floundered a little bit because he's kind of a 4-3 only body. And I kind of speculated that that was a big part of the reason, and a couple of people, including in the bleachers, Michael Felder, who does fantastic college football work for the Bleacher Report, he tweeted back at me like, this is exactly probably the problem, because he was fine in multiple schemes in college, but his body type really only fits a 4-3, and so he's kind of playing out of position in Chicago, kind of the same way that you could say that it happened to Dayton Jones. It would be kind of interesting to see that kind of play itself out, and what the deal with his work ethic issues are. The Now Rocky scouting report, Nolan Rocky at NFL.com, it's got, like any scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, but enough for us to think that he could be a starting quality player. He could not make the team, and I think all of the elements are there. Calls him a good athlete with good body control, balance, has an understanding of the way blocking works. He finds the ball quickly, effective spin move, a strong tackler, athletic enough to string down backs in space, outstanding career sack production from the interior. The weaknesses that he lists include that kind of work ethic problem, the inconsistency of his motor. He's a little short. And that his strength at the point of attack isn't that high, which is probably one of the reasons that he doesn't fit a 3-4 scheme as much, and that he can improve his hand use a lot. I talked to Master Tesfatzian at the Washington Post, former Vikings beat writer, who, huge Arizona State fan. He went to Arizona State. And I think he even went to Arizona State concurrently with Will Sutton. I don't know for a fact if that's the case. But, he was talking to me about how Will Sutton's work ethic issues did exist in the past, but by the time, he entered his final year of college with the team, he kind of overcame that. And if you take a look at his production over the course of his 3-year career at Arizona State, that makes sense. He goes from 1 sack to 2.5 sacks to 13 sacks. He goes from 3 tackles for loss to 5.5 tackles for loss to 23.5 tackles for loss. He was very productive in his final year of college, and that might be related to the fact that he focused a lot more. But there's still, those work ethic desirability questions. There's the questions of, hey, he had that ACL injury, and hey, he didn't work out with the Chicago Bears. Is he going to work out here? But there's every reason to think that there's an opportunity there for him to turn the corner. Like with a lot of these players, who are kind of flyers, you always have to ask, is there room? Like, does it make sense? Can I argue, right, why, things changed here? If he suddenly blows up, what's the argument? Why does he do it? And if the reason is compelling, then I think that's, kind of worth the dartboard throw. It's, it's kind of like you take a look at a player like Will Sutton, who hasn't, has kind of washed himself out of Chicago. And you take a look at a player like Vlad Ducasse when he was with the New York Giants, and you ask those questions. And I don't think there was like a narrative that was really compelling enough for why Vlad Ducasse would be poor in New York and excellent in Minnesota. And, it didn't work out. He was one of those flyer shots, 90-man camp bodies that I was actually opposed to, even though, 90-man camp signings are not that big a deal. But, Will Sutton, I think, is the opposite. I think that you can construct a scenario where he blows up in a big way and can contribute to the team. And so he's kind of one of those risks for the 90-man camp roster that I heartily approve of. He could not make the team. But he could also potentially start at 3 technique above Jaleel Johnson. I think all the tools are there. So he's going to be kind of interesting too. And I think that the Vikings are crafting a situation at 3 technique where you're probably going to be happy with the result, because there's going to be a competition between Tom Johnson, Jaleel Johnson, Will Sutton, and Dayton Jones. And whoever is the best among them is probably pretty good. Whoever's the worst among them is probably not that good, because, when you put together a bunch of sort of high-risk probabilities together, the lowest is usually pretty low, but the highest is pretty high. So I think that this is a pretty good this is not just a pretty good signing by the Vikings, but it encompasses a pretty good strategy by the Vikings to find the best solution at 3 technique.
Going back to what I was telling you before the show, he played only in 36 games. Like you said, Arif, he's had very little experience in the NFL, and he's only started 18 times, 60 career tackles, no sacks, and 7 passes defense. But as you mentioned, he was really good for the Sun Devils. His last year especially, he was a two-time first-team All Pac-12 selection, 161 career tackles, 45 and a half tackles for loss, and 20 and a half career sacks. So he's one of those players that really started out slow in his college career, but he really continued to bloom as his career went on. Maybe that will be the same case in the NFL. We'll see.
So of the three people competing at this position, would you say that they are physically similar or physically disparate? I mean, just given Zimmer's, I guess, predilection for trying to create mismatches and using personnel switches, and especially the use of the 4-2-5 nickel package, do you think that having, say, Jones and Sutton, or Dayton and Sutton, or God damn it, Johnson and Sutton, or Jones and Johnson, of those three, which do you think would be the, I guess, most difficult to plan for and defend against?
Well, 4 again, because Tom Johnson could potentially, be the starting 3 technique. I don't think that would be, the best case scenario or anything like that, just because, you've got a lot of worries about his run defense. I think that they're physically quite different. Tom Johnson he's pretty fast for his age, but largely I think Mike Zimmer described him as slippery, and I think that's a pretty good way to put it. He's got really good balance. He knows how to shoot gaps, and he's got a pretty good first step. Whereas Jaleel Johnson is not as athletically inclined, but he's probably the strongest out of all of those 3 technique options, and has the ability to play, one technique at the nose tackle position behind Linval Joseph, if he needs to. Will Sutton is maybe a little bit more like Tom Johnson, but he has probably more athletic limitations, but he also is probably a little bit more explosive off the first step, and he might have some more agility problems than Tom Johnson has. Whereas Dayton Jones is athletically, he's astounding. He can be quite the athlete. He can do, he can fulfill sort of the full range of motion at the full range of speed. He's fast. He's got an explosive first step. He's agile. He's got good balance, and all that. You just need to be able to see if you can harness that in the defensive tackle spot. And I think that with those kind of different body types, I think that you're right that you can create rotations that fit sub packages perfectly. Like Tom Johnson is already kind of your purpose-made 3rd and long 4-2-5 nickel package guy on passing downs, but Jaleel Johnson can be your guy, on 2nd and 3 when you're pretty confident that they'll run, but there's every chance in the world that they could definitely pass, and you kind of need someone who doesn't just have the capability of defending the run, but also has the ability to put some pressure on the pocket. Or, you could have Dayton Jones in there if he works out well enough to be there on 1st and 10, where they're more likely to run the ball, but that running the ball is not going to be as impactful as if they did it on 3rd and 1. And if you can get a sack on 1st and 10, like Dayton Jones might be able to do, you can help your defense out a lot. So, there's a lot of different situations that those kind of body types can contribute to. And then, like you said, you might be able to even have, defensive tackle packages where instead of Linval Joseph on the field, you could have, Dayton Jones on one side and Jaleel Johnson on the other side, and have, the capability to respond to different kind of offensive threats. So, yeah, for sure.
Dayton on one side and Jones on the other. or Johnson and Johnson. Many
you can
more
have Johnson
tiers.
and Johnson.
Many more tiers. It's the winning formula.
I guess physically, like you're saying, Jaleel Johnson and Will Sutton are quite a bit different according to this Star Tribune article that we have. 6'1", 290 pounds is Will Sutton, and Jaleel Johnson is 6'3", 316 pounds. So he's a little bit bigger. I think he's probably got a little bit more capabilities, maybe a higher motor or something like that. I think he's just a little bit more athletically. I mean, you kind of said he wasn't as athletic, Arif, but I don't know. What do you think compared to Sutton? I think Sutton's probably faster than Jaleel Johnson, but I feel like Jaleel could probably do more physically.
Well, in terms of the physical prototypes, I think that Johnson is a guy who's kind of the way that he wins as a pass rusher is largely through technique, and the way that he wins athletically is largely by keeping anchor. And so I think that he's got more strength, and so from that perspective, he's got that dimension of athleticism in his favor. But I think that Will Sutton's overall advantage as a guy who shoots gaps and gets off with a more explosive first step, and a guy that overall has more speed and probably more agility, although I'm not super confident on that. I do think that he probably has more agility. I think that means that generally speaking, as athletes, they're different enough. And I think that Julio Johnson he's not that good of an athlete compared to other three techniques. He's an astounding athlete compared to probably nose tackles, or you or me. But I think that compared to a lot of three techniques in the NFL, including Will Sutton, his quickness disadvantage and his flexibility and agility disadvantages will probably play themselves out at the three technique spot. So, I do think that Will Sutton is more athletic, but there are certainly things from an athleticism standpoint that Julio Johnson can do, just because he's bigger and has the ability to keep anchor that Will Sutton can't do, which is kind of why they have the capability of fulfilling different roles.
If I had to wager, I would say Julio Johnson, I think, has the best chance to win the starting job.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because I think not only because you spent the 4th round pick on him, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the starter right away, but again, Tom Johnson is coming off that Achilles, which a lot of people, I think, have put that kind of to the back of their minds as, I don't know if he's going to be totally 100% healthy by that time, or by the time training camp hits and even the preseason, because first of all, he's an older guy, and the Achilles injury is not necessarily an easy injury to come back from what I've seen. But Johnson, I think, has the best chance to start because I think he's got capabilities both in the run game and on passing downs.
Well, all right. I think that's about it as far as Vikings news, right? Nothing else major of import happened this week other than, I guess, Laquan Treadwell giving an interview where he said that he will do better this year, which, good.
Yeah, good. There is it's not getting acknowledged that much, and probably Vikings fans should be, more excited about it, I guess. But there's a report from Lertzema, Bob Lertzema, who's got a lot of connections to the team, who says he's convinced that Teddy will play in the preseason, and I don't know if I
is he a doctor?
That confident, or if I would trust. No, Bob was former Bob, former Viking.
It's a rhetorical question by way of sniping.
Okay.
But no, I'm not convinced either, I guess, is my interjection.
Yeah, so, and he used pretty strong language. He was like, I think he'll play in the preseason. He's throwing sharp. His knee is recovering very, very well. I don't know, man. It's worth bringing up, but it's also, sure, Lertzema probably has connections with the team, but, this is kind of just built on him watching Teddy throw. And, one guy having connections to the team, that's nice, but I would like, somebody with a longer or more consistent track record of reporting breaking news to make this argument.
I think the most interesting thing is going to be where Teddy is at when training camp comes around, because I think that's going to tell us a lot of what we can expect from Teddy, if he's either going to be a backup or is he not going to play at all throughout the season. What really is going to happen with Teddy? Obviously, Reef and I assume Dusty we're all Teddy on Team Teddy, I should say.
Keep Teddy alive.
And so we're definitely hoping for the best for him, because I think there are a lot of different variables that I've covered in articles that I've written, and I'm sure many other Vikings fans and writers have talked about, that Teddy Bridgewater has a lot of things that I don't think Sam Bradford has in terms of the winning capability. Like Sam Bradford, granted, he's been on a lot of bad teams, but he's never been over 500 in his career, and Teddy was able to do that last year, and he's got a winning record for his career. And there's many other things that go involved. I could go on and on that, but I just feel like Teddy, if he's healthy and he can get back to where he was, I think Teddy's the answer over Sam Bradford.
Well, okay, so this actually kind of neatly segues into our first mailbag question from the email inbox, which you can submit your questions to at norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. Comes from Brian James, who is wearing his old and cranky helmet today, or at least he was when he sent us the email. He writes in, "The combination of me aging and my team contemplating a long-term commitment to Sam Bradford has me contemplating the existential value of always shooting for 10-6 in a wild card berth while praying for the flukes that could, but really won't ever, carry us to a championship." Wow. All right. So 2 questions. What's the point of watching the Vikings play to save Rick Spielman's job? And who is the best quarterback in the league that you would let walk away rather than pay a fair market contract?
That second question's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that one a little bit. But the first one, I think that if you have a team that's 10-6, you have a team that really does have a realistic shot. I don't think it's like a Warriors-Cavs situation where if you're in the playoffs, it doesn't mean anything. I think that historically we've seen some pretty unlikely teams take it to the playoffs. Obviously, the Falcons and the Patriots this last year wasn't, the meeting of the plucky underdogs. We saw it with the Ravens. We saw it with the Giants, probably both times the Giants. And I think that we continue to see it. So I think that a team that makes the playoffs is a team that that's competitive enough for you to at least, I think, invest your hopes and cheer for. And I think as a Vikings fan, I get, that's not good enough. And I understand that. But I think that because of the single elimination format and the nature of football itself, I think that if you've got a team that is generally good enough to get into a 10-6 position, that's worth cheering for, because I don't think you're losing anything by investing in that cheering, because I don't think, it's written in stone, because I don't think that you're going to run into a Golden State Warriors buzzsaw. I mean, even the Patriots lose in the playoffs, right? So, yeah, and I think that it's fine that the Vikings are struggling to get out of mediocrity into plus mediocrity, right? To get into the 9-7, 10-6 area. And so, yeah, it's kind of frustrating because it feels kind of like this purgatory. You'll never get better. But I think historically we've seen teams, take that and go with it. I mean, there are even years where storied franchises have had bad years where it feels like they've been struggling to achieve relevance, like Pittsburgh, and they make it to the Super Bowl. So I think the won't really ever thing kind of overstates, the inevitability of a good team beating a bad team. I think there's much more randomness than that. So that answers the first question. The second question I think is kind of fascinating. What's the worst quarterback you let
best quarterback
go? Maybe what?
Best quarterback you let go.
Right, sorry, best quarterback you let go, which is kind of the same thing as the worst quarterback you'd be desperate enough to sign, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's just agree for now that the league has kind of decided that Colin Kaepernick is like the threshold.
The league has decided a couple of things about Colin Kaepernick. Not everything, I think, has to do with his play.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people agree that it doesn't have everything to do with his play. I think it's just kind of the extent to which the play matters that people are arguing about. But, that's interesting. I would let Alex Smith go. Is he the best quarterback I would let go? I guess it kind of depends on which quarterbacks are better than Alex Smith. Carson Palmer I would let go, but I don't think he's better anymore. I think that he's kind of fallen off. So I don't know if you could say he's the best quarterback. I guess between the two of them, who would I take next year? It'd be Carson Palmer, but just because I want that higher variance stuff. And so I guess Carson Palmer is the worst quarterback I'd want to maybe resign. He's too old. Maybe I'd let him go too. Let's see.
I would probably let go Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers, honestly.
I don't know about Phillip. I feel like he's got one more year. Eli I'd let go, but I kind of just hate Eli. It's not fair for me to evaluate Eli. Okay, what about Andy Dalton? Okay, so Andy Dalton had a phenomenal 2015. 2016 definitely came back down to earth, ranked 13th in adjusted net yards per attempt. Pro Football Reference ranks his QBR, his ESPN total QBR. Where is it? Where'd he go? 20th, kind of next to Joe Flacco and Carson Palmer and Trevor Siemian. He had a bad year. It seems like he is a quarterback that, despite he just had an astounding year, but every other year he's been kind of struggling to hit average. Would you let him go in a way that the Bengals did not? So you'd let him walk. You have no. Let's pretend you don't have AJ McCarron and you're not confident in whatever backup you have, and you have to get a rookie quarterback. Would you let Andy Dalton walk? That's a really difficult thing to say.
If I had to pay him a large contract for like 5 years or more, I would probably let him walk.
You probably have to pay him something like $19 million a year for 5 years.
Just franchise tag him.
That only gets you 2 years, and then the second year it's like freaking $30 million.
Well, is it worth the short-term investment rather than wasting years later down the road if he doesn't pan out the next 2 years?
Well, that's the question, because like most rookie quarterbacks are not good. Teams are not very good at evaluating even quarterbacks in the first round. Quarterbacks have a higher bust rate per pick position than any other position because teams reach. It's very easy to miss on a rookie quarterback. So, which is not to say, it's not like all rookie quarterbacks are doomed. But I think that last year's is an instructive example. Jared Goff was awful. Carson Wentz was bad. Doesn't matter whether or not you want to admit it. He was bad. And Dak Prescott just kind of showed up out of nowhere. I don't think you can kind of rely on Dak Prescott being there every year. So so would you be willing to let go of Andy Dalton? I'd be willing to let go of Alex Smith. I don't think you're going anywhere with Alex Smith. I'd be willing probably to let go of Eli Manning, but again, I'm just like not fair about that dude. I'd let go of Trevor Siemian. I'd let go of Ryan Tannehill. And I think that Ryan Tannehill could be really good elsewhere, but clearly he's not going to be good with the Dolphins. If I was the Dolphins, I'd be okay letting him go and drafting a new guy and dealing with the vagaries of that. But yeah, I think Andy Dalton is kind of one of those edge cases that you're kind of concerned about. I would keep Matthew Stafford. I'd keep Russell Wilson. Obviously, why would I say obviously I keep Russell Wilson? I keep Matthew Stafford.
Would you keep Andrew Luck?
I don't like Andrew Luck, but I keep him.
Yeah, I'd keep him.
What about Kirk Cousins? He's a guy that I consistently think is not good, and then he statistically performs a lot better than I think he will.
He's like the definition of average. Like he's like almost always right at that 16 to 14 best quarterback in the league right there. So I mean
he ranked 6th in ESPN QBR, 4th in adjusted net yards per attempt, 7th in passer rating. That's surprising, right? Like I didn't
that
expect
part. Yeah,
well, I think everybody was surprised by his performance last year. I mean, that's like looking at Andy Dalton 2 years ago and being like, well, I would keep that guy.
Right. Exactly. I don't like Kirk Cousins, but I think his play over the last 2 years would kind of force me to consider, which I think is probably what happened in Washington, would probably force me into keeping him versus drafting a rookie. So maybe he might be the worst quarterback that I would keep, which would make Alex Smith the best quarterback I wouldn't keep. And Andy Dalton, I would have to just think because I think he's maybe between those two.
Would you go full Bills and let go of Tyrod Taylor?
No, I love Tyrod. He's better than those three guys.
I would agree with that.
I think there's consensus agreement among us. I would keep Stafford, probably keep Luck, and I don't know about Cousins. I don't know about Dalton.
I think if I was the Bengals right now, I would.
Oh, and let go of Joe Flacco. Just I'm throwing that.
Yeah,
let him go.
Yeah.
Average Joe, get out of here. I I would probably say if I'm the Bengals, if there is a contract situation coming with Andy Dalton, then I have no idea if there is or not, but I would say franchise tag him and draft a quarterback just to see what you get, and then let him sit under Andy Dalton for a year because the Bengals continue to be one and done in the playoffs every year anyway. So, except for last year, they didn't even make it, but I think the Bengals would let Andy Dalton walk after they get a guy to replace him. Maybe AJ McCarron could be a decent replacement. I don't know if he'd be a average quarterback or right around the top 20 range, but I don't know. That'd be an interesting situation. There's not a whole lot there. I definitely agree with you on Alex Smith. I would definitely let him walk, especially after you just spent a whole bunch of draft capital to get Patrick Mahomes. So.
Oh, that's true too. But I think in this question is essentially asking, if you don't have an answer, who is the best guy that you would let go of in the world where you don't have an answer? But yeah, still Alex Smith.
Yes.
Well, all right then. To the Twitter. Jeers this week to Jay-Z Hoodie, who made our mentions functionally unreadable.
Boo.
Boo. Caleb Arndt writes in, who starts week 1 at 3 Tech, and to which extent will it be by committee? I think we kind of agreed that there's a strong possibility that it will be by committee, and that at least one person named Johnson will be there.
Yeah, right.
There will be at least one Johnson at 3 Tech.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to get the week 1 start. That's probably wide open. I guess if I had to take a stab at it, it'd be Jaleel Johnson. But yeah, I think a committee is very likely.
And Tommy Gunn at Tommy the Gun 13 writes in, did the Vikings do especially well with post-draft non-rookie free agents this preseason, such as Floyd and Sutton?
What was the question?
Post-draft non-rookie free agents. Did we kill it, or is our game weak?
I mean, I like them. Like, I think they're probably better than most post-draft free agents that are not rookies. That question took me a little bit to parse. Okay. Yeah. I guess within that context, they crushed it. I guess they could sign Kaepernick. I'd love that.
Yeah, that will never happen, but would be great. I would support that.
I think the signings were, I can't even remember what the signings were last year, but I think the Floyd signing is a lot bigger than many of the different signings the Vikings made last year, just because of what Floyd has been able to do in the league. And I mean, he hasn't done a whole lot, but he has been semi-successful at points throughout his career, and just basically the only thing holding him back from, I think, getting a contract from a team is his off-the-field issues with the alcohol and whatever else. But yeah, it's been all right. I thought the Vikings made some pretty interesting undrafted free agent signings. A lot of people, or I know from watching the draft, Mel Kiper had Aviante Collins high on his top available tackles towards the end of the draft. So I think the Vikings made a good pickup there. And who knows if he even pans out or not, but yeah, I think the Vikings definitely succeeded in that this year.
Graham Smith at Smith _ stuff writes in, is the book on Treadwell really already written? A lot of factors last season that didn't help him out very much.
I don't know what those factors were. I think there were more factors that helped him rather than hurt him. I think that injuries to Stephon Diggs, the shaky hold that Charles Johnson had on the starting spot, as well as the fact that Charles Johnson got injured, the fact that the Vikings were willing to bury Jarius Wright at whatever cost, the fact that they even named Laquan Treadwell a starter for week 11 before they, pulled the plug on that on game day and actually started Cordero Patterson instead. I think there's a lot working in his favor. It's the exact same things that led to Stephon Diggs grabbing the starting spot. It was injuries and uncertainty among the starters, and Diggs performed well enough to grab a starting spot. And Treadwell didn't even get to be on the field. I think more worked in his favor than worked against him. I think that you could make the argument that a switch in offense is kind of hurt, but they didn't switch the plays, they switched the play calling. And so if he doesn't have the ability to get to the right route depth on plays, it doesn't really matter who the offensive coordinator is. They're not going to call plays where you don't have to do anything. So I think there was more available to help him than hurt him. The book's not done. It's not written on him, but the odds are really, really poor. The article that I wrote in some coverage about the prospects that Treadwell has, out of what, 56 odd first and second round receivers, something like that, 56 players, only 3 of them who had total yardage below 300 ended up being consistent solid contributors. Golden Tate, Demaryius Thomas, and Vincent Jackson. It's few and far between. Vincent Jackson's probably the best player type analog to Treadwell. Golden Tate's kind of weird because he just kind of learned how to catch. He just was not good at catching at Notre Dame. He wasn't good at catching his rookie year. And then suddenly he actually became pretty good. It's not, that doesn't happen very often. I don't think that, and also, I mean, Tate and I think Thomas and Vincent Jackson, they all had more yardage. They were at the upper end of the 300 yards cutoff that I used to evaluate it. I think it's just incredibly unlikely that he pans out as a starting quality receiver. So the book's not written on him, but I think we know a lot more about him. And I was against the pick when it happened, and I think that there were more opportunities for the Vikings to be had. But yeah, I mean, the book's not written, but I think we've narrowed the range of possibilities, narrowed the likelihood of certain possibilities, and that's concerning.
I think some Vikings fans on Twitter were saying that, this Michael Floyd signing means the end for Laquan Treadwell, and I don't think that has anything to do with if Laquan Treadwell is going to make the 53-man roster, because I think he's pretty much entrenched to that spot, because there's no way you're going to give up on a first-round pick after just 1 year and cut. I don't know how much he makes. It's probably not a whole lot since he was in the 20s, but I'm sure that's a decent amount of money where you would not cut him even if he is your, say, 6th wide receiver. But I think Treadwell definitely has a lot to improve on. And hopefully he does. Hopefully he does become a Demaryius Thomas or a Golden Tate or whatever, one of those receivers that you mentioned, Arif. But yeah, I don't think the Floyd signing in particular is going to affect his career. Maybe it'll affect this year, but I don't think it'll affect his career as a whole.
Yeah, I don't think the Floyd signing is an indication one way or the other about Laquan Treadwell in particular. The Vikings needed depth with or without Laquan Treadwell. I think all the reasons to be concerned about Treadwell exist just in terms of Treadwell and not whether or not the Vikings want it. I agree with you.
Well, wait, didn't we spend a lot of time last season talking about how Treadwell was kind of underbaked, and because of all these factors that you kind of described as beneficial to him, they actually were probably detrimental to his long-term growth as a player?
I don't know about that. Maybe you'll pull up the receipts by going through the show notes or going through some previous shows and tell me that I'm wrong about that. But no, I think that it's not so much that. So one, the first thing I found was that age didn't matter. I was looking at age when I was looking at first and second round rookie receivers who didn't perform that ended up performing well or whatever, and age played no role. I was very surprised at that. Age is a significant predictor of NFL success from college, but once you enter the NFL, it doesn't seem like having a poor rookie year at wide receiver is impacted all that much by your age, which I find that really fascinating. So that's one thing. The second thing I think is Treadwell had the tools to get on the field, even if there was a lot he had to learn, and he just didn't even get on the field. That's the biggest concern. He had 3 targets, 1 catch. He just didn't get on the field. And so, yeah, there's a lot yet to learn, but I think not seeing the field at all is a big sign is a big concerning sign.
One thing you got to remember though too, at least under Mike Zimmer, he tends to keep rookies, maybe not necessarily first round picks, but in his tenure, he's kept a lot of rookies on the bench during their rookie season, or he hasn't played them nearly as much because he wants them to learn.
I don't think that's the case. I think that's a myth. I think a lot of people say that, but
I was just gonna say, I don't think that's necessarily the case with Treadwell because we had so many different injuries and so many opportunities for Treadwell to step up. Like you said, the injury to Diggs and the injury with other multiple receivers, I believe. There was, I don't know if Patterson or I think Thielen was pretty healthy all season, but I think Patterson might have had something at one point, and Jarius Wright was completely boxed in by everybody else. Charles Johnson was not anything to write home about. So I agree with you in the fact that Treadwell didn't really have a whole lot stopping him from taking that number 3 wide receiver spot.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people will say this, but in 2014, Anthony Barr started week 1, and Zimmer has much more control over the offense or over the defense than he does the offense, and that's a pretty good indication that he's willing to start rookies if they show some level of performance. And obviously, the fact that Jerick McKinnon and Teddy Bridgewater saw the field a lot in 2014, that doesn't have as much to do with it because that was driven much more by injuries at a position where it is difficult to sort of get like rotation of players. But then we saw Eric Kendricks start week 2. He was outsnapped by Chad Greenway in week 1, and then he was never outsnapped by Greenway again throughout the 2015 season as a rookie. So he started pretty early. We saw Stephon Diggs start week 4, week 5, as soon as he had, the capability. We saw players like Shamar Stephen play pretty significant roles as rookies too, even though, they were 7th round picks. I think there's a pretty good track record of rookies not just starting but playing pretty early into the year. Not just because of injury, like T.J. Clemmings, for example. He obviously doesn't count, but I think Stephon Diggs counts because that player, the player that he replaced, returned from injury pretty quickly, and Stephon Diggs moved up the depth chart quickly enough for him to be in consideration for that 3rd spot. I think Anthony Barr counts. I think Eric Kendricks counts. And I think that the significant playing time that they gave to a lot of rookies, counts in a big way too, at some of these other positions that they didn't give, for Treadwell, where it's kind of the easiest position to get playing time because you rotate receivers a lot. So I don't know that Zimmer actually makes rookies wait. I mean, I think that for like Mackenzie Alexander and Trey Waynes, they had what would have been the Teddy Bridgewater problem. There was somebody ahead of them that, they were just comfortable starting. In this case, Terrence Newman and Captain Munnerlyn. So I don't think that really implicates them. I don't think it was a question of whether or not they wanted to start rookies. Rather, Terrence Newman is good. And also, Trey Waynes is not. I think that plays a role too. But yeah, I think that this team is much more willing to play rookies than a lot of people think, because they have.
Maybe the 2016 draft class was just an outlier.
I think so. I think the 2016 draft class was really disappointing, and so that's why they were an outlier. Yeah, because what their best contribution was the special teams play of David Morgan and Kentrell Brothers, I think. Yep.
Well, so there's the answer to Skull88's question. Does the lack of contributions by the rookie class last year reflect more on the players or the coaching staff? I mean, it's probably the players, right?
It's probably the players. I mean, it's always both. Yeah. But in this case, there's a good chance that the players played a bigger role.
Does that change this year? I mean, almost certainly yes, right?
Do you mean from the 2016 class, or do you think will the 2017 class contribute?
From the 2016 class. I assume is what he meant.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to see a lot of Willie Beavers or Moritz Behringer. I'll say that.
No, Mobo.
And I think it'll be difficult for Stephen Weatherly to see, the field, but I think there's an opening for him. It'll be interesting to see, obviously what happens with Laquan Treadwell. We'll probably, regardless of what happens, we're going to see more snaps from him. So we're going to see more of a contribution from the 2016 class. And then, other than that, who else is in the 2016 class? Mackenzie Alexander, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna see him. So we're gonna see more from them. I don't know if we'll like what we see, but we're gonna see more from them.
And Zen Cupid writes in, if Sharif Floyd is able to play, what is the likely defensive tackle rotation / roster?
He's dead. He's not gonna play. In a world where he's able, Well,
In a world
his hamstring isn't firing because you're not gonna
where
play.
Sharif Floyd is not dead.
But yeah, I mean, his hamstring's not firing yet. Nerve damage because of surgery, I think is done. But if he's not done, which would be amazing, he starts and he's fantastic. I don't know. What was the question? Well, what does the rotation look like? Floyd, number 1. Julio Johnson, number 2.
In a world where Teddy Bridgewater and Sharif Floyd both play in 2017.
That's not a fair comparison. I mean, Teddy's going to play in training camp. We just heard.
Yeah, we just heard.
Right, I forgot. Sorry.
Leon at Menace40 writes in, which is better, crispy or floppy bacon? I think
In between.
I
I don't like
knows my
over
thoughts.
crisp bacon. I think people burn bacon a lot, and it's not that good. But I don't like super soft bacon or anything like that. I think so. This is a trick I learned from America's Test Kitchen. Dusty probably already knows it, but if you cook bacon, get like a good browning on it, and then you pour just a little bit of water in the pan, and let the water steam off. You'll actually be able to get tender bacon that is also crispy and not floppy. It's really good. I was surprised. I thought it would suck because like steaming bacon sounds awful.
Well, wait. So you're talking about like a separate steam pan, not like pouring
No,
water into the
like
splattering
literally
grease.
pouring water into the pan that the bacon's already in.
Wow.
I know. It sounds awful.
All
I
right.
swear to God, I agree that sounded like awful. But I tried it, and it was amazing. It's especially good for things like carbonara, where you want crispy bacon, but you don't want it burned.
Ooh, yes. You want that like al dente texture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it can provide that. So I don't know if I would ever do it for like whole strips of bacon. I should have clarified. But I think that a lot of bacon applications that can actually be pretty good. I was surprised. So not super crispy bacon. I think when people ask for crispy bacon, they get overcooked bacon. But I do like generally kind of crispy bacon. Maybe a little bit of give.
Yeah, I think the best piece of bacon is right in the middle, not too soft, not too crunchy, just right.
Like you can break it in half, like satisfyingly, but it still stays one piece. Like the fat still holds it together.
Right. It doesn't like crumble into dust.
Like shatter, like a piece of glass.
Yeah, right.
Your bacon is overcooked, sir. We already did the barbecue one. Didn't we agree that Carolina barbecue was probably the best
Sure.
last time? That sounds like an argument we've had before. This question is from me. I did not tweet it.
Oh, okay.
But Arif, do you believe that Avril Lavigne is still alive?
I don't know. I'm genuinely concerned. I think there's enough questions here.
Well, so is it just because she's been like out of the spotlight for so long that you're not certain that she is who she says she is, or is it just that her makeup makes it easy to like send a body double in her place? Like, 'cause that's like one of the conspiracy theories floating around the internet is that Avril Lavigne is dead and has been dead for what, like 2 years now, and a body double has been
much longer than 2 years.
Oh, really?
Like 14 years.
So Avril Lavigne was never like a real thing. Well, no, I guess that would be so she put out like one album, dated a guy from Sum 41,
and recorded the second.
Recorded the second, and then died, and
then the second album comes out. It's her voice, but like it's the new performer.
So there's a new performer like lip syncing every Avril Lavigne song like from the second album, and all subsequent Avril Lavigne music is like fake.
Yeah, well, the voice is different, and I know that that's actually not that compelling given how much production can affect the process. But the voice is different, the music's significantly different, her style suddenly changed, and yes, these are all things that pop stars, go through. But it happened really quickly, significantly, all at once. All of the music on the 2007 album is really sad, potentially suicidal, and the jawline is different. The height of it, according to some random Brazilian website that I want to trust, the heights are different. Some people say, I think the lips look a lot different. That's like the most compelling thing to me because Avril Lavigne has very distinctive lips. It's got this curl, and the new one, evidently her name is Melissa. The new one, actually, this is my favorite thing about this conspiracy, is that whenever the Avril Lavigne Twitter account tweets, people will just respond with, "Nice try, Melissa." I think that's great. But it's just amazing. That's exactly what an imposter would say, Melissa.
Indeed it is.
But yeah, I mean, there's not a chance that she grew smaller, right? She was already pretty small. Why would she get shorter, Dusty? I don't know what the answer is. Except we have a pretty good hypothesis. Here's the thing. We already have interviews from when Avril Lavigne was alive of Melissa, the body double that she employed at the time. They were already teaching her to sound like Avril.
Wait, she had a body double? This?
Yeah, I mean, almost all celebrities have body doubles.
Wow.
This is just like to protect her for like paparazzi and stuff.
Wow, so she was like in training. So every celebrity has like their body double in training, basically, in case they like die and want to keep it a secret.
No, not like I don't. No, the only reason that she was learning to sound like Avril Lavigne because they were best friends and they thought it'd be fun if she sounded like. It wasn't like, I think it was a happenstance thing. I don't think it was like a premeditated. In case she dies, Melissa, you will take over. I think it was just, oh my God, she's dead. Nobody can know. Melissa, you have to bear this burden for the next 15 years until Twitter finds out.
Well, why can't Avril Lavigne just be dead?
Well, because then you wouldn't be able to sell the music.
Are you kidding me? Like, artists do
so
much better.
In the short term, that new album that she recorded right before she died, you're going to do monster numbers. Of course it is. But it was already going to do pretty good numbers. Not as good as if she died right before its release. But you're not going to get the 2013, 2014 hits. You're not going to get Girlfriend, where she steals some dude's girlfriend. Or Kawaii, where she tries to be cute in Japan.
Name one artist who is less successful posthumously.
All of them, because they couldn't make more albums. Like, Amy Winehouse sold a lot of the one album. Great. I think if she lived longer, the cumulative sales of 4 albums would be a lot more.
She ends up selling more albums. All right.
Name one artist posthumous. Like, wait, all of them, man.
Well, no, all I'm saying is that existing catalogs get a pretty significant sales bump when an artist dies. It happened in Nirvana.
And it's a one-time bump. And why wouldn't you wait until at least 4 albums are out before you're like, oh, she's dead, she killed herself. Now all 4 albums can sell.
So
it only makes sense, Dusty.
I have listened to more Prince music since he died than way before that he was alive.
That's
just a personal failing on your part.
No, Prince is way more famous now.
I know.
Prince is definitely way more famous now that he's dead. So
what do you mean Prince is more famous now? If Prince had died after his first album, he wouldn't have made whoever owns the rights to his album, maybe Michael Jackson, wouldn't have made nearly as much money as if Prince continued producing hits decades into the future like he did.
Michael Jackson, another example of an artist who is more popular now that he's dead.
Thriller was the best-selling album of all time before he died.
Well, yeah, and he wouldn't have sold it like. First of all, if he had completed his like crazy O2 Arena like quote unquote tour thing, it would have been that, and then he would have gone back to selling like basically no records. But there's been like since his death, there's been a resurgence in like mid-catalog Michael Jackson fandom.
That's great. He needed to have developed that mid-catalog stuff first. If he had died after his first solo album, no one would have cared. They'd have been like, oh, child stars, this happens.
He's no longer bankrupt because he died.
Well, yeah, that's true. You're just making my argument for me. You want your artist to die after they've got a good decade of music out there.
Well, so maybe that argument applies to Avril Lavigne as well. Like maybe if she does like kill herself after her second album, it's like, oh, she was what, like 19? Like, oh, that's sad. But
right. Exactly. If she dies now, there's so much money.
Speaking of Prince,
good job, Melissa. Good job.
So here's my question then. My last question. I feel like we've dug pretty deep on this one. Will Avril Lavigne ever die? Like, will we wait for Melissa to die of natural causes and then just have a great big funeral for Avril Lavigne?
No, I think Melissa's a unique case because she already spent a lot of time with Avril. And hold on, also, here's something. Avril Lavigne, 2007 album, a lot like the 2002 or 2003 album, whatever it is, hates, like, it's like very like early 2000s. I hate preps. I'm in alt punk, whatever. But like hates the trappings of whatever you want to call preppy rich boy, whatever, high school. And then that's exactly who she becomes after that album's released. That doesn't make any sense. That album already hates, girls who wear pink, and then she wears pink all the time immediately. Styles change gradually, Dusty.
So you think that it is a result of Avril Lavigne literally becoming someone else and not just like an image change?
Yeah, it's not like a Madonna style transformation.
Speaking of Prince, did that other new song that was going to be released ever come out?
Probably. There's a lot of them. Not
Yeah.
new songs, I guess. There's a lot of Prince songs.
A lot of ones that he had in his vault too, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, like, other than the immediate outpouring of, like, grief when Prince died, I don't think anybody has, like, played any songs from the album Musicology, like, at all. Which is too bad, because it's a good album.
It's a good album.
All right.
Do we have any more questions, or are we just ending on the Avril Lavigne conspiracy?
No, I think we've hit peak Norse code. There's there's no better place to end than with your vehement defense of Melissa as Avril Lavigne.
The jawlines are different, Dusty. It's all there.
Well,
Man.
okay, do you have this link to this Brazilian newspaper? Will you put that in the show notes so that listeners can weigh in for themselves?
Yeah, I'll put the first link of the tweet thread, the first tweet of the tweet thread I found it in, so you can go through the entire conspiracy. Because, that's how conspiracies can unravel these days, through tweet threads. Thank you, Louise Mensch.
That's I might cut that sentence out. I don't think anyone should say that.
Okay, fair enough. No one should ever say that. That's fair.
I think we have our episode title. No. That's our new formula. Thank you, Louise Mensch. No. Oh God, no. Enough of this. Arif, what are you working on for the next week or two? Since we will
film breakdowns on the rookies, and then I'll probably start the training camp guide.
All right, Carson, what do you got coming down the pipe for us?
Well, I just had an interview last week with a former ESPN producer, Jason Romano. He worked on Mike and Mike on Sports Center and different places. It was a good talk. We had a good talk, conversation about the ESPN layoffs, his career at ESPN, and his new endeavor of a new podcast that he's hosting. So it's a good conversation. Check that out. I interviewed one of Arif's bosses, Tom Schreier. I talked to him, and that was a good conversation. So you can podcast that, The Shuby Show, and we're also doing a giveaway right now. That T-shirt that I won is a little bit too small for me, so we're going to give it away on tomorrow's episode of The Shuby Show. We're giving that away with a pair of socks, and I might throw in a small bag of beef jerky for the winner, and it'll be the winner's choice of what flavor. So
Hashtag regifted swag.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, in that case, make sure you listen to The Shuby Show. Make sure you listen to the Andy Luke and Arif Football Machine and Wide Left. And definitely return 2 weeks from today for the next episode of Norse Code. For intern Carson and useful Arif, I am host Dusty. And we'll see you then. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, or wherever else fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan, who can be found on Twitter at Arif Hassan NFL. Our intrepid producer and occasional co-host James Pagachnik can be found on Twitter at Big Mono or curating the official Norse Code Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. The number one intern for the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings is Carson Schubert, who can be found on Twitter at Radio Rubin.
I'm your host with a firm grasp of the obvious, Dusty O'Connell, and my name is my handle on Twitter. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, your one-time donation can be made at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Please visit our website, norsecodepodcast.com, where you'll find links to our Facebook and YouTube pages, along with the episode archive and some other good stuff. And any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can be emailed
to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. And on behalf of the entire Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.